Perhaps I can begin by acknowledging and celebrating the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet. And for me, the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, it may be different for you, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I'd like to introduce our Vice-Chancellor, who really needs no introduction, Professor Brian Schmidt, AC. We are the only university in the world who has a current Nobel laureate as our Vice-Chancellor. The new ANU strategic plan, ANU by 2025, was launched on the 2nd of August. Many of you will have been to that launch. And the whole point of the plan is it's going to underpin the university's work, research, and priorities for the next 5 years. And we're going to hear more now from the Vice-Chancellor for about the next 20 minutes before we open up for questions about what the plan means to him and what it should mean to us. Brian, you're on.
All right. Thank you, Sally, and welcome everyone. I too am on Ngunnawal Ngambri land. I pay my respects to elders past and present. It's good to see everyone virtually. Wayne, it's good to see you wear your hat at home as well as on campus. It's one of those things you're just never quite sure what people are like at home. I'm still wearing a suit coat, but I don't normally do that unless I'm trying to impress all of you. So this forum is being recorded. So if you don't want to be recorded, please turn off your video, turn off your sound, and email events@anu.edu.au if you'd like to ask a question, and we can ask it anonymously. If you do want to ask a question non-anonymously, then we're doing this old school ways, and you get to raise your hand, or you can use the chat function, and I'm going to do my best at managing all the different channels of communication. But really, this is something I think we're all getting pretty used to, and I'm happy just to do it sort of in a fairly native style. We have colleagues from Planning and Service Performance joining us today. Can answer any questions that might emerge around the planning and implementation process, so welcome. And I thought before I open the floor to questions, I just go and provide a little bit of context and share some slides with you, if that's okay. So after 5 months of consultation, we launched our plan, ANU by 2025 on the 2nd of August. And, you know, why do we have strategic plans? It's always a good question. And it's because, especially right now, we are in a constrained environment. And rather than trying to just each go our separate ways, we want to bring coherence. We want to add up to more than the sum of our parts. And in doing that, I don't want to stop each one of you from being wonderful in your own way, but I want to help us help each other and try to, you know, have some big impact within our own disciplines, but then collectively. And so the strategic plan is really about focusing our attention. We spend a lot of money each year supporting all sorts of things in the university, but we want to make sure we don't forget to do things. And the strategic plan helps guide those decisions and hopefully helps each of us make the decisions of what we might spend our time on, A or B, because sometimes it's not obvious. So it's kind of tries to help the gray areas a little bit. It's also meant to, I guess, remind us all and the people who support us why we're here. And so strategic plans within the university sector have a challenge of all looking an awful lot alike each other. I think we have succeeded with your help in creating something that's pretty ANU centric, which is good. And I think really talks about how we're going to be different than the rest of the Australian community. But of course, we have things where university and we want to do those bits of university and we want to do it well. So I do thank you all for all of the effort that you put in trying to summarize where we want to be going over the next 5 years. So if it's all right, we'll bring up the first slide, and I think Pam is driving today. Or it's anyway, thanks, Pam. So we've launched the plan, and now we want to make sure that we actually try to line those things up. So we do have more, bring more than the sum of our parts. So we have put essentially the essence of the plan on a page, this page here. And it starts with our values up in the upper right-hand bit. And we've put our values out there and had a lot of discussion about what they are. But I think it's important to have boundaries. These values are boundaries, boundaries that we're not going to go outside. They're sort of the fence that we're working within. And if we're ever having to make hard decisions, then we're gonna transcend those boundaries, go, not be true to our values, then we sort of know we're doing the wrong thing and we need to think over again. But we also can use them as a chance to look at our interactions with each other, look at our interactions with other organizations and groups and people, and make sure we are true to our values in what we do. So I do think they're important. And indeed, this year in this plan, as one of the key things that we talk about as under the standard bearer for inclusion, we actually say that we're going to have zero tolerance for behavior and activity that is inconsistent with our values. And we've got that in there because I think universities have been, we are a place where a whole range of things can happen, and we need to keep that. But when we have bad behavior, bullying and the like, I think we've been not very good at calling that out, especially when it's not when it's early on. So I come across bullying when it's been going on for decades, when it's harming people deeply, and I have to take quite definitive action. And I'd like us to get onto that a little earlier, because I think if we normalize our values, then hopefully I won't have to keep removing people. I've had to, exit over 30 people over the last several years because they have gone beyond our values. And quite frankly, I'd like to do less of that because it's happening less. But that's one of the reasons those values are in there as well. So just to let everyone know, please have the confidence to be prepared to normalize our values, but also have the confidence that if you have to go in and we can't do it in a what I call a collegial fashion, and it is serious, that we take it very seriously, and I deal with each one of those issues personally to make sure that we do have those values appropriately dealt with there. We have our purpose, our vision, and our motto here, and those are, they describe what ANU is. I wouldn't say that they're super distinct in the world of universities, but I think they do remind us of our purpose as a university and of the national university. We also have the 4 pillars. And under the 4 pillars, our national mission, research that transforms society and creates national capability, creating a student experience that's as good as anywhere in the world, being a standard bearer for equity and inclusion. Those are areas that of focus. Now, we don't expect every part of the university to do every single thing there. And indeed, we need, as part of what we go forth, to prioritize, okay? The prioritization of what's most important. What are the places we can really drive things? That's a conversation I'll have with you in a slide or two, but I really want to use this as a chance to think about, yes, we have the business as usual and do stuff, but what are the places we're really going to make sure we focus our attentions on? So if we go to the next slide, before we went and launched the plan, we went out and had a conversation with you, and I really do appreciate people even a couple weeks out being prepared to stand up and say, hey, in thinking about how we relate to the plan, a few things have emerged, and we changed the strategic plan, up to the last couple of weeks, listening to people. And I think we made it better in that last couple of weeks. So, within national responsibilities, you've said you have a responsibility to intellectual leadership in Australia. And I think that's a really important part where we go through and we don't just work in our little silos, but we actually show leadership where we go through and talk within your area, the legal areas, but of course you intersect with a huge amount of all the things that the university is trying to do in a cross-disciplinary way. So that intellectual leadership and getting people to think sensibly about what Australia is and what it will be, I think it's a really important part of what a law faculty can do. And as we have seen, it is certainly under threat. I think the Australia we want is under threat due to, quite frankly, pretty poor governance in many respects, and a nasty bit of populism that is emerging within different parts of the community. With respect to our contribution to research excellence, translating and communicating research on the legal aspects of national issues, such as climate change, the environment, and First Nations people's matters, are where you want to get out. And I think that's absolutely great. And as I indicate, I've truly come to appreciate how the College of Law is really a great interdisciplinary hub, because almost everything we do that matters, that really has impact, connects with your faculty one way or another. And so it is good to see in my area of astronomy and space, being able to have legal expertise and things like that, as well as the Constitution. These are really important things. And you talk about that cross-university collaboration. And I think there has been a giant leap forward over the last couple of years on this. And what you're all doing is just much more visible. And I think in the end, much more impactful. And so I do congratulate, and let's keep working on that together. Our student experience, you want to create critical thinkers, complex problem solvers engaged with world issues. Yes, absolutely. One of the things that you guys get is you get some of the smartest students around the country coming here, and they really end up going, preferentially being leaders within business, within government. And we really need to make sure that we give those people the best set of skills that we can, because if we don't do it, then the nation and other nations around in the region don't get the best out of some of their most capable people. And so I think it's easy to forget what a critical role we have in ensuring the future of our country, because the country is relying on us to skill these people up. And I think there's a whole bunch around here around our values and things that I hope you guys are there and engaging with. But it's really important to make sure that our students, through their student experience, through your teaching and your interactions, they leave here absolutely ready to be, to grow and to become the leaders that the world needs. Finally, on equity and inclusion, you want to look at ways of looking at diversity in the curriculum. And indeed, I think that's a really important part of what we're doing. And, if I reflect, there are a set of things that I think almost every student at ANU needs to depart here with. And I guess I reflect that, even in the US, which is a pretty broad education, I had a whole range of things that I knew nothing about. And I think ensuring diversity in the curriculum is one way for us to really help create those leaders who can think of things outside of just their little narrow focus. Next slide. Now, in this, with respect to the different pillars, we went through and we asked you to kind of sing out the places where you think you're going to contribute. And the little boxes kind of indicate the places that you are going to really focus on contributing. And I just note that in that national mission, absolutely many places for you to contribute, but the global environment sustainability, I think, as we already have great expertise at using your knowledge and expertise to help create, already things like as soil sequestration of CO2 and things like that. But of course, that's just a tip of the iceberg. We've already discussed the role that you're going to have in empowering the First Nations people in this country to really, I think, create an Australia that truly is reflective of the 60,000-year history that we have with our Indigenous communities. And I guess being able to connect in and use law that underpins how we might approach tech in society and create national capabilities in data-driven policy and business development. I think really being able to bring in that tech aspect into your work and how it intersects with all these other things is really important. Within research, we have talked a little bit about beneficial solutions for society. Again, you guys are at the core of that, and communicating what we do much better. One of the things that I do worry about of universities around the world is we're very good at talking to ourselves and to people who were trained at universities, but I really do worry that there's a divide between society of people who sort of get what we're about and people who see us as out of touch and almost the enemy. Now, that hasn't happened so much in Australia yet, a little bit, but it certainly has happened in my homeland of the United States and a bit in the UK as well. So I think I'd like to get out and make sure that we have the ability to get out in front of that here in Australia before it becomes a problem. We've talked around student experience and inspiring programs of study that are academically rigorous, really important. We don't want our students to be happy because things are really easy. We want them to be really happy because things are really challenging and interesting and inspiring. And I think you guys do a really good job at thinking about that, and I congratulate you. And also being able to build non-degree offerings that engage with our students. And so we've had, and law has been really good at running things like some of the, the moot court stuff for students. We have the international security group of which law has played a good role in letting students kind of come together and design their own and building this connection between academic staff and our students and our professional staff in a way that goes beyond just the classes and the degree. So I think you're doing an excellent job there and really setting a standard for the rest of the university. So we do want to, within Standard Bearer for Inclusion, have an inclusive, support, and collegial environment for all. That's something we have to keep on working on and asking ourselves, is everyone included? Are there people missing out? Because it's easy to be happy ourselves when we just, look really inward. And I think it's really important to ask ourselves who's missing out? Who are we not actually including in our conversations? And the whole thing at the right has, what does success look like? We've distilled down what a successful ANU looks like into 8 points. And I think it kind of covers at a very high level what a successful university looks like. And so when you're doing new activities, putting effort in, I really do look for you to ask yourselves, am I advancing one or more of those points? Because I think that it's easy to break down the university into little micro bits that end up not adding up to, for example, are we a trusted national institution? Because if we're ultimately not trusted by Australia, and so when we ask Australians right now, I think 77% trust universities in Australia. That number is down in the 50s in the United States. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there where half the country doesn't actually trust us, because we absolutely need to be trusted if we're going to do our job as an institution. And I think we'll get trust if we do the other 7 things, but I do hope you can use those as a way to kind of judge where we're going. If we can move to the next slide, is our job now is to quickly think a little bit about what we want to do straight out of the blocks. It's probably stuff you've already talked about and thinking about, so that we can discuss it in October. The way we're going to be doing things in the years to come is we're actually going to have conversations every year around what we're going to concentrate on and do, and what our expectations are as part of our planning and budgeting dialogues. And so as part of that, we're asking you to kind of go through and say, this is what we're going to focus on now, and we'll have the fullness of time to think about how does this link in what we're going to do over the next 5 years or so. But what we really want you to do is use those institutional values as a guide to your decision making. We want you to make sure that what we're doing is driving in the direction of the success measures. We want you to be ambitious but realistic. And we don't want you to, we always need you to be collaborative with the rest of the institution, right? It's not anything where I win and someone else loses. That's probably not going to be consistent with the outcomes that we want. So a lot of what you do, I've already highlighted, is excellent. And so for heaven's sakes, keep doing what you do well. That's really, really key. And you guys are doing really, really well as a college. But there'll be some new things. Now, it's easy to think in what we've just been through, wow, you know, there's no money, how could we do anything? I want you to remind yourselves that your time is the most valuable thing that this institution has. What you spend your time doing is the most valuable thing we have. And some things require money, but a lot of things don't. And I do like to remind people that, you know, the work I did here from 1995 to 98, the discovery of the accelerating universe, that was my time plus $8,000. And the $8,000 worth of investment was important, but it wasn't a lot of money. It was important because it enabled me to run an international team when I was young. So we have $8,000 to make choices to do things. We don't have thousands upon thousands of $8,000 checks, but we have a fairly good number of them. And we have money to do bigger things, just not very many of them compared to what we're used to. So being able to choose what we do and we don't do, or where we spend the money that we do have, is really important. And that's one of the things your strategic plan needs to think about. Okay. The other thing I want you to think about is we have just been through a crazy time, and the university has had to make big cuts. And these are cuts that you even had to make before COVID-19. But I think the university has set itself up to success. Now, this year, we have been underspending partially because it's been very difficult to recruit people, but we haven't been traveling and doing things like that. So the university's finances this year are going to be in very good shape to the point where we will come close to potentially running a surplus. I'd like to say that it's all's good then. No. 2022 and 2023 will be tough, but I think as a whole, the university is now in a place where we are gaining altitude again. And I think there is real opportunity for upside over the coming months and years. And what we need to be ready to take those upsides when they come. And I don't know how or what they're going to be. Could be philanthropy, could be government initiatives. It may be, large multinational suddenly wanting to partner with us on things. I just don't know. But we need to be, ready for those opportunities on our terms when they come. So in your plan, I don't expect you to do everything in the first year. I expect you to make some choices of what you're going to focus on. And I don't expect you to, do all these things with, money and effort that just doesn't exist. But I do want you to think strategically about what you choose to do. And of course, we need all parts of the university to work on things like culture and behavior, First Nations, and ensuring that we really reflect the diversity of the nation. And so we talk about gender representation. Your college is actually quite good in that area relative to many, but we still tend to be pretty poor at representing groups beyond Anglo ethnicities and backgrounds. So we really do need to focus and make sure we represent Australia and our region better than we do. Next slide. So I know Sally has told me you've already started a bit of your strategies and you've had in place a fair bit of strategic planning. So we're just asking you to kind of put down your ideas. We're not expecting war and peace. We're not expecting perfection. And what we're wanting to see is what you're doing. Then we're going to look at, for example, what our themes around research, education, First Nations, etc., are wanting to achieve. And then we're going to look for holes and we're going to iterate through this. And my hope is that we'll have a whole set of activities come together by February, at the beginning of next year, academic year. And this year is a first baby step, okay? But we can expect then us to be able to iterate every year and refine so that we can become more sophisticated in our conversations in the years to come. With respect to budget, a lot of people are worried about budget, as am I. I think that, as I said, we did about what we needed to do last year. There's not going to be a lot of extra money unless something unexpected happens, which might, but there's not going to be less. So I think you can expect to have a bit of indexing on what you had budgeted this year. And you, like other parts of the university, I think will struggle to spend your budget this year just because of shortfalls of getting staff on board. But I would expect that there shouldn't be too many nasty surprises. But I think we have a lot of positive things to look through. Finally, I do recognize that this has been an exhausting last 18 months. And I recognize that all of you have had to go in and work in ways, at lengths, in ways that have been disruptive to you and your lives, have been exhausted. So I am hoping that things are going to start normalizing now over the coming months. And I do thank you very much for all that you've been able to do as a group. So I'll stop there. And Sally, is there anything you want to say before we hand over to a Q&A?
No, I don't think so, Brian. Just to thank you on behalf of the college for spending this time with us, launching the plan and encouraging us to think about it.
All right. I can't imagine a bunch of legal scholars not being prepared to have questions or at least points of view. You've never been a shy group. Cassandra, someone who knows about space in ways that even I don't. Over to you.
Well, I feel the same way about you and your knowledge of space, Vice-Chancellor, so the feeling is mutual. Thank you for this and for taking the time to walk us through it. I actually assume that your answer to my question is going to be no, but I'm going to ask it anyway, which is the timing of this all. Basically, what we have now is 2 weeks to come up with our college strategic plan at a time where, you know, and I do note, I really appreciate what you said about calling out early when our behaviors don't match our values. And what I mean by that is, you know, if we're serious about inclusivity and if we're serious about getting our collective minds together on something that's quite important for the coming years, those of us who have children in particular are finding the extended lockdown absolutely exhausting and very difficult to juggle things. You know, keeping our heads just above water. And I really do feel like if we're to give serious attention to this, squeezing in a couple more Zoom meetings in the next 2 weeks is perhaps not sufficient. So I assume at this stage of the whole process, as I said, that your answer is still going to be that timeline can't be extended, but I wanted to ask it nonetheless.
It's a fair question, Cassandra, because this is certainly less than, I'm stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea on this, because I think your request is not unreasonable, and I do understand how hard and exhausting it is. I guess what I'm looking for at this point is I think we have no choice but to do something, but we're going to have a chance to refine it over time. So I don't see what happens in October as anything other than a first stab. I don't want, one of the things that this university, a big failure mode of this university is it tries to get things close to perfect before it does anything and ends up never ever doing anything new or different. So what I guess I would ask is be engaged to the level that you can right now, but know there's going to be an iterative process that goes through into February and again next year and stuff. So if my concern is that we simply will not be able to start iterating if I allow you to get things perfectly, because by that time we're going to run out of time for everything else. But I acknowledge what you say is true, and I don't. I realize that in 2 weeks there's only so much you can do, and I don't need you guys all to run a marathon in the next 2 weeks. I need you to rely on some of the things you've already talked about, and be very kind of short and simple of what you're going to plan to do, but also know you're going to have a chance to iterate, even if you haven't personally had a chance to really get in and talk about what you think in the detail you want the next couple of weeks. So I apologize. I do recognize the lack of time available.
Oh, thank you. But I do also appreciate that, yeah, getting started is more important than perfecting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anthony.
Just reiterating too, thanks, Brian. It's really, it is exciting to be part of the university in this way and really kind of thinking big, and it's good to know that it's an iterative process. I'm really, one of the key themes that I took from your presentation is that, you know, time is the most precious aspect in a way, and that we have to make really sensible choices about where we spend our time and put our energy in. And sometimes when we get down to a granular level within a college, when we're looking at performance development reviews and so on, there's that sense of stretch across all domains, where it may be that in fact there are these multiple pillars, and we may need an approach that links our performance development review with achievement with respect to particular pillars. Now, maybe this is down the track some way, but it would seem to me if we're going to incentivise this and this sort of thinking, and we're really going to put, if you like, our money where our mouth is, then it needs to get to that granular level. And then we need to be able to have those conversations within the college about, well, essentially when it comes to PDR time, well, how are you really impacting the achievement with respect to the various pillars? And it may be that you're better able to impact in one area than another, and having the flexibility around that may be key to, if you like, drawing from the diversity of strength that we have in the College of Law, but perhaps more generally in the university.
Yeah, and I had this conversation actually earlier today with my team about essentially doing exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's, if you think about how performance works in a university, part of it's transparency and having a conversation. My experience is almost everyone likes to actually do well at what they do. And so if you think about those conversations, it's about trying to get beyond the things that are, I would say, seen as being prestigious or the right things to do in a university, and realizing actually there's a whole bunch of things that are right in university, and that the rigidity that we have here at ANU, and I would say Australia more broadly, is actually quite a bit more than a place like MIT or Stanford, which kind of lets anything happen. And why are we so fixated on certain things as opposed to others? And I'm certainly not. I will tell you that from my perspective, I know excellence. It comes in all sorts of flavors, and I really don't care if it's a Nature paper or actually just getting out and changing the way groups organize themselves, but it doesn't isn't realized as a direct scholarly output in our databases. So I'm very I'm very cognizant that the way we do our PDRs needs to change, and I think what you have described is sort of where we need to end up. Not a one size fits all, but a very flexible thing where we discuss it. And I've always thought that each of us needs to be able to describe how we're doing that. And then does it pass the pub test with your supervisor? And the answer is either yes or no, I don't know. And then the other part of this we need to get the promotion committees to actually do as we've agreed as a university, not then put their little layers on top, which I often see. I mean, I will say I have to scratch my head sometimes on promotion committees, and I tend not to override them because I don't think that's what a vice chancellor should do, but I sure don't agree with some of them. So as a warning. Don.
Thanks, Vice Chancellor. I appreciate your time today. I just wanted to go to one specific item listed in the indicators for success. One of those items is strengthen strategic government partnerships. Now, I'm happy to reveal to this group that in the course of the last month or so, I've had views expressed to me by senior members of the college executive, which are a quite significant variance to my own views with respect to what are strategic government partnerships that this college should be entering into. Now, I don't want to get into the detail of that conversation, but what I would be interested to learn is what document can I go to reflecting this current strategic plan, which identifies the relevant strategic government partnerships that the ANU values. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. So this is something that we're building on the fly. So we're changing the way we do Commonwealth relations. And what I'm trying to find, I don't want to stop peer-to-peer academic to public servant relationships that already exist. Those are good. We don't want to stop those. What I do want to stop is 6 or 7 different groups going out with slightly different versions of their handout to the government in ways that are uncoordinated and sometimes, are literally saying, no, don't give the money to them, give it to me. And that really makes us look bad. But what I really want to do is to develop a conversation where we co-create activity with the Commonwealth in a way that respects their needs and what we know. We have a tendency to interact with the Commonwealth in a way where we say, have I got something for you? Or sometimes, as it's expressed to me, you guys are a bunch of friggin' idiots, just listen to us and we'll tell you how to run your life, which is what we do sometimes, okay? So we need to get into it in more even keel. So we're in the process of creating an interface for the Commonwealth so that if they don't know where to look, we can provide them here's who to talk to. And then what I'm looking at is creating essentially a themed convening group where we can have experts on that side, probably within different departments, the themes that on our side that can contribute to those ways. And so we don't step on ourselves so much. So the document you want does not yet exist. However, if you're having concerns or whatever, always good to start with your dean who links in to different stuff. But also you can go through, for example, my office or Steve Fanner, who's right now in charge of these relationships. But we're going to get much more sophisticated in structures over the coming the coming year. But the idea is to have, as I said, themes. So, for example, in Law of the Sea, which you may have a certain things that connects into a number of areas that we might be interested in, whether it is in fisheries, whether or not it is in some strategic things within DFAT. And so there will be places for you to connect in, if that makes sense.
Over there, darling. There you go.
All right, other questions? Comments? Nothing more? Okay, Vivian.
Thanks, Vice-Chancellor. I've got a very general question for you, which is, from your perspective, how do you see the future of higher education changing? I mean, there's so many challenges, particularly in relation to technology. And for example, the ability of a person, one academic to teach constitutional law to every law student in Australia via, I mean, the content, not the experiential learning, but the content. And presumably that's the same with physics for one person in the world, I don't know. So with those challenges in mind, where do you see this all going?
A good question. And right now we think in Australia of higher education being very homogeneous. Every institution is the same. It's not true. They're not all the same. There's a reason why ANU is now attracting people systematically from all over the country at a higher rate than any other institution, because we are providing something that's a little different than the rest of the country. So digital is here, and you need to think about if you're going to try to compete, in my case, with Brian Cox. All right. Well, if I try to give a lecture digitally against Brian Cox, I lose. So let me think about how I can do that. Well, one, I'm friends with Brian Cox. I'm going to get him on, and if I use his lecture material, which I might as part of before the tutorial, then I can go through and have a tutorial and discuss it, or maybe I can use some of my relationships and knowledge to provide something that just is different than anyone else. And yes, I have had Brian Cox show up to one of my cosmology lectures unannounced, and that was quite exciting to the class, not so much to me because I got to know him, and it's not such a big deal. So we need to know what we're trying to do that is different compared to other people, and not try to be something we're not. The minister says, why don't we just go in and teach 300,000 students around the world really cheaply? Well, are we going to be any good at that? Why are we going to be better at that than a Harvard, which could use the name and outsource it to a company, or Deakin that already has the technology and doesn't have these large numbers of people doing research and all these extra added stuff? We're not competitive in that space, right? So I think that higher education is going to fragment a bit. And I think that institutions are going to have to really know where they are in that. I think ANU is not going to be the high volume mass education. I think our campus is going to remain really important. Where we have niche knowledge, which is not easily replicated at other institutions at our quality, then that's a good thing we can potentially do digitally. So for example, we'll probably keep on teaching Sanskrit and Tibetan and other things because we kind of are the best in the world at doing those things right now. So we can do that digitally because we're the top of the tree. But in digital, if it's pure digital, you better be top of your tree that you're doing. Soon as you're competing against someone who's a bigger fish than you, you're dead. So that being said, the campus experience is still really important. So for example, imagine you're doing an online master's class in law. Then we need to be good, but what we can then do is say, and then you're going to come and spend an intense week on campus and meet with a bunch of peers and a bunch of interesting people and get something that you're just not going to get at UTS, for example. So we need to always be thinking about what we're providing. From the student's point of view, is this interesting or is it cheap? Because it's either going to be kind of really interesting or it's going to be cheap, and it's what I need that's cheap. We're not in the what I need, it's cheap. We're always going to be in the interesting, best in class. I think that's our niche for this university. So we need to make sure we're in that mode. But there are going to be people who get caught between, and they're the ones who are going to really suffer. If you're middle priced, middle quality product, not a good place to be, in my opinion, for the future. I think you'll get done in one way or another.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then we could talk about research, because that's completely off the agenda. And my hope is to actually get the Australian government to understand that if it wants research, it cannot expect the students of foreign countries to fund it, which is what it's doing right now. And I don't have any other way around that. The government just simply has to do that. We're the only country in the world that's managed to pull that off. And the rent seeking has been good for 3 or 4 years, but it's not sustainable. So I'm working on that. Wayne.
Thanks, Vice-Chancellor. And yes, the cap never comes off, not even at home. I'm particularly interested in, although it's not mentioned in the dot points under the student experience section, but it is mentioned in the education section of ANU by 2025. I'm particularly interested in, the complex problem solving and the transdisciplinarity. And I know that Grady, as Deputy Vice-Chancellor, has also written that into the draft graduate outcomes, which I think are really good in terms of building on the plan. This is more a comment than a question, I suppose. I have heard some talk about how we might achieve some of that. And there's been some focus on first year. I'd really like to see the university think about transdisciplinarity and complex problem solving in terms of the final year and perhaps even the final semester of every student's degree. I think it would be really interesting and set us apart from some other universities if within that final semester or the final year of every student's undergraduate degree, there were these transdisciplinary courses in which students from multiple disciplines got together to work on real world complex problems. And I think that would also be really attractive to employers and some of our stakeholders as well. So, just a comment, but I think that this could really be developed in final years of students' degrees.
I think there is a huge opportunity to think a little bit about what I would say is going beyond, having broad knowledge, maybe done well early on, and then that complex layered on, and maybe we want to link into, government agencies, big four consulting companies as work integrated learning, so that they can at least see how those things work, because everyone needs to understand how a big four company works, even if you're not ever planning to use them, because they have that it's good to understand those things. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to be creative, but whatever we do in this space, people need to be able to step back and say, the way we do our degrees and things right now, which are very cluttered and very complicated, noting that I think the number we had was 1,183 majors, minors, and specialties in this university. 1,183. That's too many. So we need to, if we're going to do these things, we're going to have to declutter what we're doing. I still want to have real options for our students to build things that they want, but we don't have to have quite so many rules, right? Trying to figure out if people have actually graduated right now is almost impossible to do. It goes beyond a computer program's ability to do it at this point, because the reason that's true is because the rules are so complex, they're almost certainly not consistent at the level they need to be. Will, you're muted. Did we lose Will? Take two, Will. No microphone. You could use the chat. All right, we got a couple minutes left. Any final bits while Will pounds his question into the chat? Sally, anything you would like to say as we finish up?
No, just that I think it's an ambitious plan. You know my love of KPIs, and so we'll be building some measurement into our response so that we know when we've got there. But nothing else. No.
Yeah, and can I say, Will, I think you're ready now.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah.
Marvelous. Vice-Chancellor, thank you so much for your patience with my audio problems and for the time today. My question is about the future of research funding, particularly the strategic future of research funding. The ANU's had this extraordinary historical track record with Australian federal government research funding. Where do you see the balance lying in the future between domestic government, international government, philanthropic sector, private sector? Is that a core part of the strategic vision currently expressed that we should think more about, or are we happy with the business as usual, focusing very intensely on the ARC and supplementing with philanthropies, private sector, consultancies, and a few international public funding opportunities?
So with respect to the research, the way to fund our research, what I really want us to focus on is how can we, advance knowledge and have impact broadly. And what I really want to, when I say impact, it's changing the way people think and the way people act. And that kind of covers the whole spectrum. How we fund it, I don't care, right? If you go out and are able to do it, quite frankly, do amazing work and with a fairly small amount of money, and you don't need the ARC to do that, then for heaven's sakes, do it. Now, a lot of people do need access to things like the ARC, but imagine you're a tech. So I know we have the question of let's just talk about the future of contracts, right? And so I think we even have a corporate funded research program on that. Well, that's great. That's the right group for that. Why mess with the ARC? Let's get into the place where it's really happening. If you want to work with the Commonwealth and affect policy, sometimes it's good to have Commonwealth money. I don't care where the money comes from. Philanthropy is really useful in certain areas. It's not in others. I don't want to be taking money for the sake of taking money. It has to enable you to do things. Remember, your time is valuable. So the money needs to be a multiplier, an amplifier of your time. And getting a bunch of money to hire a bunch of people who are doing absolutely boring things that no one cares about for, as basically contract research, we don't want that, right? It might make our KPIs look good. And that's what I worry about, is making sure we have real KPIs that reflect what we want to be as an institution. So no hard and fast rules. We need to have a flexible way of looking at things. But what we want to do is make sure you and collectively all of us have that chance to really do things aligned with the strategic plan and have the resources as best as we can manage to do it. All right, Sally, final word.
Just thank you very much for spending an hour with us. I think there were some really good questions there. People, as ever, Brian, are genuinely interested to hear what you think. That's great.
Right. Well, thank you all, and job well done. Really impressed how you guys are all doing through a tough time, and look forward to being able to take your ideas. And I'm ultimately your sous chef to help you do the big things rather than the other way around, which I think people get confused. You do not do what I say. I help you do what you want. That's what the job of Vice Chancellor is. So best of luck, and hope to see you on campus probably next year. I'm sorry to say.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.